The file they sent me had no cover notation. That was the first thing I noticed: no origin stamp, no member state seal, no routing code from the Vasken Accord's intake registry. Just a case number stenciled in the old archival script and a single line beneath it in Pulhari secondary script: do not discard. Pass to whoever reads these next. I am Leave Sean Orth. I have kept the Continuity Hall's records for 31 years. I have received sealed filings from 49 member civilizations, logged every category of strategic miscalculation the galaxy has managed to produce, and I have never once set a file aside because it made me uncomfortable. I am setting this one down now to tell you what is in it. The Vasken Accord maintains a standing archive on the boundary designations, the sectors that member civilizations flag as navigational advisories. Most of those flags are routine. Gravitational anomalies, debris clouds, contested extraction rights. The flags around human space are not routine. They predate the Accord itself. They appear on charts so old the cartographic notation has changed 3 times since they were first drawn, and in all 3 notations the designation reads the same: do not enter, cause unknown, no return on record. In my first year at the Hall, I asked my predecessor why the advisory had never been formally investigated. She was a Velhari elder, broad-shouldered and slow to answer. She looked at me for a long moment and then she said, because no investigation has been opened, and no investigation has been opened because every civilization that knows enough to open one knows better than to try. Then she told me to log the quarterly updates and she walked away and she never spoke of it again. I logged the quarterly updates for 31 years and I never spoke of it either. Until the Pulhari file arrived. The Pulhari were a mid-range civilization, established, technically capable, politically ambitious in the slow and careful way of species who have spent several centuries negotiating their place in a crowded region. They had standing in the Accord. They sent delegates. Their delegates were pleasant, well-prepared, meticulous in their record-keeping. The file they sent me reflects that. It is the most organized disaster I have ever received. Their first contact with human space boundary agents occurred 11 years before the events the file describes. The agents arrived at a Pulhari frontier installation, not warships. The notation is careful to clarify this: small vessels, irregularly marked, their hulls painted in a riot of colors and decorative patterns that the Pulhari intake officer logged as frankly confusing. The humans aboard matched the vessels. Their movements were exaggerated. Their speech was theatrical. They offered gifts that were elaborate and strange. The Pulhari intake officer filed his assessment in 2 words: benign eccentrics. The assessment stood. It was reviewed at 3 successive levels of Pulhari Strategic Command and at each level it was confirmed. Benign eccentrics. The notation became the foundation of the Pulhari position on human space. The record is explicit about this. A civilization capable of sending contact delegates that looked like that could not plausibly represent a genuine strategic concern. The Pulhari High Directorate said as much in a formal policy statement dated 8 years before the incursion. The statement is in the file. I have read it many times. They were not wrong that the humans were theatrical. They were wrong about what the theater meant. The incursion was authorized on what the Pulhari called a routine survey and assessment mission into the boundary region. 14 vessels, not a military fleet by any reasonable definition. The file notes carefully, as though this distinction matters to the record. Survey craft, support tenders, 2 fast courier ships for relay. The mission plan called for a 60-day transit, preliminary boundary observation, and return. The first transmission home came at day 4. Routine. Position confirmed, crew healthy, boundary approach proceeding as scheduled. Day 11. Routine. Early sensor readings logged, nothing unexpected, morale good. Day 19. The entry is longer than the others. The survey lead describes anomalous readings in the region, electromagnetic patterns that did not match the Accord's standing charts for that sector. She notes that the readings appear to be moving. She requests updated cartographic data from the relay couriers and promises a follow-up at day 22. Day 22. 17 words. Readings have changed. We are altering our approach vector. We'll transmit again at day 25. Day 25. 4 words. Still altering. Maintaining silence. I want you to sit with those 4 words. A survey lead who has been transmitting detailed field notes for 25 days, a professional, meticulous by the standards of her own directorate's record-keeping, reduces her report to 4 words and calls it silence, as though silence is a tactical posture she has chosen rather than the only posture left available to her. The courier vessel that received that transmission logged no anomaly. No distress code. No request for extraction. 4 words and then the schedule held, and at day 28 the schedule ended. There is no transmission from day 28. The Pulhari High Directorate reviewed the gap and waited. This is documented. They waited 12 days before escalating. The internal review notes say they did not want to assume the worst from a communications lag. They escalated at day 40. The response search turned up nothing. They escalated again at day 50. Nothing. At day 60, the expected return date, all 14 vessels failed to appear at the planned exit coordinates. The Directorate opened a formal inquiry at day 68. I have the inquiry record. It runs to 412 pages. It considers mechanical failure, navigational error, a naturally occurring spatial phenomenon, and hostile contact. The section on hostile contact is 7 pages long. The Directorate's analysts concluded, across those 7 pages, that hostile contact was the least likely explanation, because they could not identify a threat vector capable of silencing 14 vessels so completely and so quickly, and because, and this is the line I have returned to more than any other, the humans they had encountered had seemed, on every prior occasion, fundamentally unthreatening. The inquiry closed without a finding. The Directorate designated the region a navigational hazard and added their own flag to the boundary charts, which I logged as a quarterly update, as I had logged all the others, without yet understanding what I was filing. The Pulhari file arrived at the Continuity Hall 6 years after that. It was sent by a junior records officer in the Directorate's Historical Division. Her cover letter, the only personal communication in the file, handwritten in a script that pressed hard on the page, said she had spent 3 years trying to understand what happened to those 14 vessels and had reached one conclusion: she would not try further. She was forwarding the complete record to the Accord archive. She was retiring from her position. She asked, in her last line, that whoever received the file please read it carefully before doing anything else with it. I read it carefully. I have read it a dozen times. What the file does not contain is what I want you to understand. There is no wreckage report. No signal intercept. No debris field. No recovered instrument. No account from a vessel that turned back in time. Nothing that found its way home except the transmissions, those 22 words at the end of the record, spread across 2 entries and a forward note, and those transmissions contain nothing that explains anything. The galaxy's oldest advisory flag does not say why. It says, "Do not enter." No return on record. That is the entirety of the case. It has been the entirety of the case for longer than most member civilizations have held standing in the Accord. I added the Pulhari file to the archive. I logged the sector under the existing boundary designation and appended one notation of my own, filing civilization now inactive, no further Pulhari submissions anticipated. I have been the keeper of the Continuity Hall for 31 years. In that time I have logged 341 boundary advisories. I have never once, in those 31 years, received a follow-up inquiry from any civilization that reviewed the Pulhari file. I do not believe that is because they found no reason to ask. I believe it is because they understood what the file was actually telling them, the same thing the advisory flag has always told them, The same thing the record of the 14 vessels and their 22 last words is still telling anyone who reads it carefully enough. Not every door is closed because no one has built the key. Some doors are closed because whatever is on the other side of them has decided, for now, to let you believe it hasn't noticed you standing in front of it. The Pulhari decided otherwise. The archive does not record what followed. It only records that nothing followed. And in 31 years, I have come to understand that nothing is exactly the record the humans intended to leave.